The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Enology webinar series. I am Andrea Botazatu, Assistant Professor and Enology Extension Specialist with Texas A&M, Texas AgriLife Extension Services. And today we will be talking about cost of quality in winery operations. Before I introduce our presenter today, I would just like to mention that the presentation will take about 40 minutes. There will be a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. So if you could hold your questions until then, or if you want to type them in, you can type them in during the presentation in the Q&A box, but we will be answering them at the end of the presentation. Our presenter today is Mr. Lyubomir Popovich. Lyubomir is an award-winning Canadian winemaker with extensive international and corporate experience in winery operation management for both high-end estate as well as fast-paced commercial facilities. Mr. Popovich has a Yellow Belt training certification from Six Sigma Canada and successful hands-on experience in using lean tools and principles within winery operation for Arterra Wines Canada and Constellations brands. Lyubomir is an expert in achieving NPD profile targets and product consistency past implementation for all wine and categories, ciders, spirit-based refreshments, as well as for other than standard wine-based products. Lyubomir has recently founded VINTNER, a winemaking and winery operations consultancy firm, helping vintners of all sizes address and solve winery production problems. Thank you, Lyubomir, for agreeing to do this webinar today, to give this presentation. Without further ado, I invite you to proceed.
Good morning, Andrea, and thank you. Good morning as well to those of you joining us from the Central Time Zone or from the West Coast. And good afternoon to the folks joining us from the Eastern Time Zone. My name is Lyubomir Popovich. As Andrea mentioned, I'm a winemaker and winery operations consultant within VINTNER. I do have 23 years of winery operations experience covering both high-end estates and fast-paced commercial facilities. Today, I'm pleased to present you with the subject of cost of quality in winery operations. And I will open up the floor for Q&A at the end of the session. In my 11 plus years with Constellation Brands and Arterra Wines Canada, my annual fiscal targets were to increase grape intake, wine quality, and production volume while decreasing winemaking and cellar costs. To achieve such conflicting targets, I learned and embraced the use of Lean Six Sigma. Lean Six Sigma is a process improvement methodology designed to eliminate problems, remove waste and efficiencies, and improve working conditions to provide a better response to our internal and external customers' needs and wants. Lean Six Sigma combines the tools and methods and principles of Lean and Six Sigma into one popular and powerful methodology for improving any organization operations, regardless of the industry. My presentation today has two objectives. First, provide you with a good understanding of what is the cost of quality in winery operations, how to identify it and quantify it. And secondly, the second objective is to provide you with insights on how to improve cost of quality in your winery operations. Along the way, I will use some Lean Six Sigma terminology like voice of the customer, critical to quality, or non-value added activities or wastes. So what is the cost of quality in winery operations? Is it A, cost of capturing in our wine the essence of time and the sense of place? Is it perhaps B, cost of making wines that are varietally correct and complex? Or is it perhaps C, optimal cost of making wine our customer will purchase? Or is it D, cost of viticulture, winemaking, and quality departments combined? Before we answer, let's start by looking into quality and cost as two separate elements. Let's approach quality first. Maynard Emery, the pioneer researcher in the cultivation, fermentation, and sensory evaluation of wine, once said that wine quality is easier to detect than define. Ronald S. Jackson, the OIV award-winning author, added to this in his Wine Tasting 3rd edition professional handbook that quality is primarily subjective and strongly influenced by eccentric factors. At the end of the day, the winery operations' ultimate objective is to sell the wine it makes. And as such, looking at customer needs and wants to define what is critical to quality, or in short, CTQ, it is only natural. There is no doubt that satisfying what is critical to quality will generate customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction is the lifeblood of any business. In our industry specifically, customer satisfaction defines the quality level for the price point, inspires brand loyalty and customer retention, and often enlists new customers by the word of mouth. Because wine customers range from novices to connoisseurs, and because there are countless choices available, the customer satisfaction is of the most importance. Without customer retention and a thriving new customer base, there is always a competitor around the corner that's ready to take over our customers and our marketplace. It is important to capture the voice of the customer in order to drive and improve our winery customer satisfaction and ultimately the quality. By understanding who our customers are, what are their preferences, as well as what inspires their loyalty, how much wine they buy, we can quantify their needs and their wants. Now, considering the full process of winemaking and delivering our wine from a lean perspective, in addition to the obvious external customers who are purchasing our wine or using our services, we must include and consider the needs of anyone who benefits from using any of our winery operation activities outputs. As such, in winery operation production process, we must include the needs of the customers that are internal. For example, sales and marketing are production customers. In production, bottling is a customer to winemaking and cellars, as winemaking and cellars are a customer to viticulture. Winemaking needs from viticulture specific quality, quantity, and delivery timing of the grape intake targets to be met, right? As viticulture, bottle shop, and winemaking, they might be looking for property equipment readiness from maintenance, as another example. Experiencing a wine free of faults, regardless of the root cause or timing, it's an example of a critical to quality requirement in order to generate customer satisfaction at all stages and levels. In winery operation environment, critical to quality or CTQ could be defined as the performance characteristic of a winery operation process, wine product, or service that is critically important to our customers, regardless if internal or external. CTQs must be first and foremost measurable. And second, how good they need to be, it can be determined and established as a target or specification between our winery operations. Considering what is critical to quality for all external customers and not only to our own winery, an appellation authority like VINTNER's Quality Alliance or VQA in Ontario establishes a minimum set of quality standards or specifications for local wines. Some of those are in place to demonstrate that the origin of grapes used is from local appellation, and the wines made from grapes that meet or exceed a minimum Brix level stay within chemical target limits or meet or exceed a minimum varietal content percentage or percentages. One suggestion in order to ensure we don't step outside or be on the offside of the industry regulated specifications and standards, like the appellation authority in this case, is having our own winery operation specifications and standards more tighter. For example, if regulatory tolerance for copper is 1 parts per million, we might want to set up our own winery specification at 0.7 or 0.5 ppm. From my experience, this is more than enough to treat occasional reductive off flavors throughout the winemaking process. Examples of winery operation CTQs from external customer or consumer perspective could be a clean wine with no faults at the time of the consumer experience, regardless of the root causes. No TCA, no off odors, no oxidation, except if you have a port or sherry style product. Except unfiltered wines, customer expectation is a clean product with no particles of any kind. Both ourselves and our external customers expect we are accurate with all claims we have on the label, from style or profile, like if the wine is oak or a note, for example, to alcohol content or the allergen statement that we have. Perhaps if we add the health conscious or lifestyle conscious consumer, the wine must be from sustainable, organic, lower alcohol, or other alternatives, SOLA for short. And here we have organic wine, sustainably produced wines, environmentally friendly, sulfite-free, orange skin, contact wine, or vegan wine. Other examples of CTQs from external customer perspective could be volume accuracy for both what's in the bottle as well as what we have in a case, consistency in the wine profile from one vintage to another, and this is particularly for commercial wines, and no closure tampering or defects. In addition to external critical to quality customer or consumer needs, here are some examples of internal customer CTQ requirements. Winemaking and cellars require from viticulture that intake grape tons matches the forecasted intake tons plus minus acceptable tolerances. And as we know, weather happens. At the same time, winemaking expects that grapes are picked at physiological ripeness, meeting winemakers' Brix, TA, and pH specification level targets, again, plus minus tolerances. Other examples are viticulture, cellars, and bottle shop require from maintenance that winery equipment is available and will deliver performance at the supplier's specification levels. More CTQ expectations are for the wine to be blended right at the first time, or bottled right at the first time, or outgoing production volumes should match the demand forecasts and the schedule targets. Now that we have unveiled what drives and how to identify, quantify, and control quality using CTQs, let's take a look at the cost element. Traditionally, businesses set their selling unit price point as the cost to produce their product plus their desired profit equals the selling price. If one wants to increase their profit, one can increase the selling price, sell more units, reduce the cost per unit, or attack any combination of the first three options. In the wine industry, where perception and image are key, many winery owners tend to start with a specific idea about how much they will charge for their wine. Some will also have a good idea of the profit they want to make. But only consciously few follow through the equation to say, if I'm going to sell my wine for X and make a profit of Y, then my cost of production needs to be Z. To determine Z, or cost of wine produced regardless of quality, traditional accounting combines operating and fixed cost budget lines. Once these costs have been already accounted for, it reduces the impetus for change or improvement in the process. For example, using traditional accounting, a reduction in labor costs involves decreasing the funds allocated to that line item. This reduction does not create a strategy or an action to enable this saving. Rather, merely hopes to achieve the decreased expenditure. Using an activity-based costing, ABC for short, all winery operation activities costs are scrutinized. Winery operation activities consume resources, which in turn consume costs. Changing winery activities will therefore change these activity costs and the operating costs. Here are some average data examples of activity-based costing for 11 Australian wineries, and those are their averages. First activity here is crushing and destemming. As you can see, labor accounts for a majority of the costs in the 48% range. The next example is pressing costs, which takes less labor, and the grape and wine loss is quite significant. Following example, fermentation costs. Then we have tank maturation costs, barreling costs, where labor is significantly over 50%, ranging in the 60%. And lastly, we have the bottling activities, where obviously the materials account for 3/4 of the overall costing for this activity. You can study in more detail and compare those costs, those averages, with your winery costs, accessing this presentation recording or accessing the source link provided here on this slide. Now, using lean concepts, let's divide all winery operation activities in 3 distinctive categories. First category, value added, followed by business value added, and lastly, non-value added activities. First category, value added activities. These are the activities that have a direct impact to critical to quality customer targets. As such, value-added activities are the activities the customer is willing to pay for. Examples of value-added activities include sourcing or growing our grapes, reception, destemming, pressing, fermenting, bottling, and delivering the wine to the customer. Second category of activities are the business value-added activities. As the wine industry is heavily regulated, there are a number of activities the winery must perform in order to stay in business. One quick example are regulatory audits. Regulatory audits might include physical counts of the bulk wine in stock, random analysis, or record checks. At the end of the day, business value-added activities have no impact on the quality or the profile of our wine. However, if we want to stay in the business and do not want our winery doors to be closed by the government. The last category are the non-value-added activities or wastes. Anywhere where work is being done, waste is being generated. Lean production helps us to identify, characterize, and address the 8 types of wastes that are used to describe non-value-added activities in any winery operation. First, we have the waste of overproduction, producing more wine than it's necessary, or having more bulk wine in stock than is necessary. Waste of waiting for the grapes to arrive, or waiting for the bottling line to arrive, or waiting for the truck to arrive so we can load our cases of wine. Waste of transportation and conveyance, having to go a long distance and carry on a piece of equipment, for example. 4, waste of over-processing, that we might be producing more than what we need. Waste of inventory, buying more materials than we require, let's say for the harvest, and then at the end of the harvest, we have significant leftovers. Waste of motion, in case that we have to do an extra move than the minimum required to move, let's say, a case from one area to another. Waste of correction or defects, when a process it's not working properly and we have to follow up with redoing the activity, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more shortly. And lastly, the waste of knowledge or talent. By having an understanding of these types of wastes, wineries have a better picture of how lean techniques and tools apply to their operations. Now, non-value-added activities or wastes can be monetized by quantifying COPQ, or the cost of poor quality. What is the cost of poor quality, or COPQ? The cost of poor quality, or COPQ, are the costs associated with poor performance, and if things are done right at the first time, all those costs would not take place, leaving the cost of quality based on value-added and business value-added activities. COPQ has 3 categories: appraisal costs, internal failure costs, and external failure costs. Appraisal costs are unnecessary costs because if the things were done right at the first time, there is no need for rechecks, inspections, and reviews. Appraisal cost examples include use of manual administration system or spreadsheets, leading to complex and duplicated paperwork instead of using a wine tracking, or a full ERP system. Another example is lack of standards associated with production specifications and quality assurance, resulting in rechecks, reviews, and inspections. Other appraisal activities are taking place because the process is not good enough to produce defect-free outputs. Examples in this last category include a follow-up duplicate free and total sulfur analysis recheck due to sulfur addition being consumed by a too high dissolved oxygen level. As such, having a good dissolved oxygen management program in place would prevent this situation from happening. Another example is for cellars or bottle shop equipment not to be fast and easy accessible or in a perfect shape. Simple non-value-added activities like looking for a clamp or a gasket take time, and once the equipment is found, the equipment might malfunction, costing us more time and money. Internal failure costs are the costs associated with failures that occur between specific winery operation process steps before the service output or the wine is sent to the next internal customer. For example, sellers must prepare the wine for the bottle shop, as the bottle shop is the internal customer to the sellers. If the wine is not ready for bottling at scheduled bottling time, the volume does not match the target cases in the schedule, or the wine is not adequately filtered, bottle shop and maybe the sellers as well will incur additional non-value-added activities and as such costs. Here are some other examples of internal failures. Having to redo jobs as filtration or stabilization if standard filtration practices and monitoring were not adhered to, or stabilization has not worked properly. Redoing sampling and lab analysis because sample was not adequately taken in the first place, making that result of the analysis executed by the lab incorrect. Cost from equipment misuse. Let's say overloading the press beyond the ideal loading, resulting in a significantly longer pressing time than, let's say, pressing the grapes in two separate batches. It affects as well the quality of the juice in this case. Oenological materials not working at expected level due to inadequate storage. Let's say you're using KMS and you're not getting the right results due to a humidity pickup in the storage location of the KMS. Cost of the equipment breakdown at key production moments, like harvest. The grapes are coming in and your destemmer crusher just breaks down. Cost of bottling to reduce ullage. Cost of sellers supplying more wine than scheduled to bottling. Cost of handling low quality materials from the suppliers. Cost of having excessive dry goods or ingredients in stock, example that I gave a little bit earlier as well. In many cases, appraisals and internal failure costs happen due to lack of a formal or standardized monitoring or quality checks or inadequate training. Looking at the external failure costs, those relate to activities to handle wine returns from the customers, customer credits, wine recalls, and cost activities with those new activities to address the external failures. So COPQ equals the appraisal cost plus internal failure and external failure costs. But majority of those costs are not easy to access. Here are a number of more quick examples of those that are more hidden and difficult to access. Dealing with low quality grapes, waiting for the mobile bottling line, inaccurate forecasting, reliance on forklifts or carts to move material, off-site storage, outdated or inefficient winery layout, lack of equipment automation control, delays from suppliers, lack of standards associated with product specifications or QA, bottling wine to reduce ullage in order to make space, equipment at capacity, contracts to purchase grapes in excess of demand, or optimizing one part of your production without considering other needs. For example, in my past history, marketing would decide and sales to increase the price of the product, which overall generated more dollars from the sales. However, the volume demand went down. That generated excess inventory in dealing with that excess inventory. To quantify COPQ, or cost of poor quality, we should make a list of relevant COPQ items and then quantify the cost of each item on an annual basis. For example, let's say that our cost for 100,000 liters of Chardonnay after pressing is $1.8 per liter, with a measured average of 2.5% of soluble solids, and measured clarification losses were 9.5%. Implementing a change to deliver best-in-class clarification methods might be able to recover up an additional 6% of our current losses, resulting in a cost saving of $10,800 annually. To better evaluate winery operations performance and identify non-value-added activities and wastes, key parameter indicators, or KPIs, can be used. In 1954, Peter Drucker wrote in his book, The Practice of Management, "What gets measured gets managed." This quote was later made famous by W. Edward Deming in his use of lean quality management techniques and key performance indicators for Toyota. Many wineries have embarked on the journey of adopting lean by jumping straightforward into application of its tools and concepts without knowing what drives performance in each aspect of winery operations or how this performance is measured. Without KPIs in place to measure production cost performance, and without the certainty of what is the actual cost to produce each specific bottle of wine that we are making, we are in danger of making ineffective decisions about production, price, and where to sell our wine. Other examples of more in-depth wine production KPIs range from winery capacity utilization, like yield in tons per acre, percentage planned versus emergency maintenance, blended right at the first time, bottle right at the first time, customer service level, or CSL, supplier quality incoming, to production activities tech time and overall winery equipment effectiveness, or OEE. Let's talk for a moment about production activities tech time and the overall winery equipment effectiveness, OEE. Takt time can be defined as the available working time per day divided by the customer demand rate per day. So takt time can be used to calculate bottling and packaging rates. It can also be used for internal cellar processes. In fast-paced commercial facilities, it can be applied to winemaking and cellars preparing the wine, that final blend, for the bottle shop, with the bottle shop being obviously the customer. That time can be also applied to grape reception, destemming, crushing, and pressing activities. So let's take an example. Let's assume the cellar team requires the crush crew to process 200 tons of must per day, and the available working time is 8 hours per day with a 30-minute break for lunch. The takt time would then be 450 minutes divided by 200 tons per day equals 2.25 minutes. So what this means, this takt time means that 1 ton of must be pressed every 2.25 minutes. To suffice the pressing rate, the grape reception, destemming, and crushing steps must have a cycle time of 2.25 minutes. That means that we need to process those grapes through the hopper, through our crusher destemmer, at the rate of 2.25 minutes in order to meet this takt time for pressing. If we look at the overall equipment effectiveness, this can be used to indicate the overall effectiveness of a piece of production equipment or the entire production line. And there are 3 components to it. First component is performance, which grades the actual output of the piece of equipment or production line with what it should be producing. Less than 100% means that there are speed losses. Second, it's availability percentage, which grades how much time it's available to run this machine versus the actual machine run time. Less than 100% means that there are losses associated with downtime. For example, machine breaks down, or there is a time to set everything up. And lastly, it's the quality percentage, which compares the performance of the piece of equipment or production line in creating an output to quality specifications set by the supplier. Less than 100% means that the machine or a production line did not make the juice or wine to the specification. Together, these components, when multiplied, form the OEE, or the overall equipment effectiveness. If we are looking to identify winery operations or winemaking improvement projects for this year or in the future, in order to eliminate non-value-added activities or wastes from our winery operations, here are some suggestions where one can focus on. Starting with our own winery operations annual goals and looking to improvements that are needed and how they can be achieved. Reviewing our performance gaps between our own winery KPIs. Reviewing data on customer complaints and wine customer returns. Areas or SKUs with a high number of complaints are indicating deficiencies. Reviewing results from our internal or external quality or GMP, good manufacturing practices, HACCP or ISO audits if our winery has those programs in place, and looking for reoccurring findings out of the specification findings for performance or non-compliance reasons. If you're in Ontario like me, reviewing your annual local appellation approval report and looking for approval failures or non-compliance reasons, it's another way to identify possible opportunities. Reviewing post-harvest reports, looking for instances and causes of equipment breakdown. This is the same for the bottling. At the end of the day, those are key moments in our winery production process where the equipment should be available and should function as per specifications of the supplier. Reviewing the Joint Health and Safety Committee annual report or the recommendations that are coming from the Joint Health and Safety Committee. Solicit and consider employee suggestions, especially where those suggestions are supported by data. At the end of the day, no one knows the winery production activities better than our talented and hardworking winery production staff. According to Australian Lean Production Guide for Australian wineries, recent case studies in Australian wine industry have demonstrated that applying lean production practices to wineries can achieve on average a reduction in materials costs of between 8 to 16% and a reduction in the production lead time between 50 and 65%. For more information on those elements, you can follow the link that I'm providing in this particular slide. Now that we learned how to capture the critical to quality elements based on the voice of the customer and at the same time identify the non-value added activities and then quantify the cost of poor quality from those non-value added activities, let's go back to our initial question. What is the cost of quality in winery operations? Winemaking, it's an art. As an artist, we want to capture in our wine the terroir and the time and the place, but this is not what fully defines the cost of quality. Majority expect our wine profile to be in line with the usual flavors displayed by the variety or varieties, if this is a blend. However, the cost to make a wine with a profile that is varietally correct, it is also not a full reflection of the cost of quality. To make a wine, one must spend on viticulture, winemaking, and quality. At the end of the day, these costs are not the entire and accurate picture of capturing the cost of quality in winery operations. Clearly, the cost of quality in winery operations is the optimal cost of making and delivering wine our customer will purchase, or practically the cost of winery operations minus the cost of poor quality COPQ. If you need assistance with optimizing your cost of quality in winery operations, or if you are simply looking for a peace of mind with winemaking or your winery operations improvement projects, please feel free to reach out to me at Lean VINTNER. I will be glad to help, as at Lean VINTNER we are passionate not only about the wine, but also about the cost to make it. If you're already working to reduce the non-value-added activities and have implemented a culture of change and continuous improvement while having in place a meaningful number of winery production KPIs to monitor and control the cost of quality from the first activity step to the end customer experience, congratulations. You are on the right track towards winery operations excellence. Thank you for taking the time for my presentation, and I will now open up the floor for Q&A.
Thank you, Ljubomir. So yes, if you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A field there, box. I was wondering, Ljubomir, is this something that is applicable to all size wineries, or do some benefit more than others from this process?
Yes, applying lean production to it's beneficial to any winery altogether, and looking for one specific project, it's important that you take in consideration different categories: people, process, equipment, materials, and environment. And of course, the larger the winery and more complex everything gets, some of those categories could have more inputs that can contribute to an output or an increased cost versus a smaller winery. But at the end of the day, regardless of the size of the winery, any winery can benefit on implementing a lean production to their operation from cost of quality perspective.
Thank you. We have a question from Robert. Do any wineries you know use Kanban or value stream mapping techniques?
Yes, as a matter of fact, here in Ontario, the large wineries in not only in Ontario, in Canada, Andrew Peller as well as Artera Wines, they do use lean in their production. And part of the lean, in order to identify those non-value-added activities, is to do either a COPQ or a value stream mapping, as Robert was mentioning, and identify by engaging your production staff what non-value-added activities you might have within your winery operations.
Thank you.
And really follow the link I provided for the Australian wineries. Australian Wine Institute, with the help from the Australian government, they put together a lean production guide for the Australian wineries. It's very well done, very comprehensive, very easy, readily available on the web. Anybody can access it. And it provides examples, specific examples with many wineries that are using lean production in Australia.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? No? Okay. Well, I guess we're gonna wrap it up then. Thank you very much, Lubomir, for a very interesting presentation, very informative presentation. Thank you all for attending. I wish you all a good day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.